Okay, next we have ways of investigating the brain. So there are 4 ways of investigating the brain. You need to describe each of those 4 ways, and you need to be able to evaluate each of those 4 ways. This could be asked about as a 16-mark question, or any individual way to investigate the brain could be asked about as a smaller question also. Now, 3 of the ways to investigate the brain involve brain scanning. Scanning techniques can record activity throughout all of the brain, or activity in specific areas of the brain. The first way to investigate the brain is an fMRI, so a functional magnetic resonance imaging, but just learn it as fMRI. What that does is it detects changes in oxygen levels in the blood. So it detects changes in oxygenation levels in terms of blood flow, and it measures something called hemodynamic response. So it measures the amount of blood flow and the amount of oxygen in certain areas of the brain, and that activity will happen in an area of the brain that is more active. What an fMRI does, it produces an image like the ones at the bottom, which is an activation map showing which parts of the brain are active in certain mental processes. It can help us with localization of function. So an fMRI shows us that the brain is working, and it shows us whereabouts in the brain that is. So it shows us function, the fact it's working, and it shows us structure. So it shows us the areas of the brain that is working in. There are some strengths and weaknesses of fMRIs on this slide. You do not need to learn them all, but you need at least one strength and one weakness of each type of investigative technique. So an fMRI doesn't use radiation, it's non-invasive, it gives you a clear picture, however it's expensive, it only measures blood flow, so it cannot tell you the type of activity, and it has a poor temporal resolution. What we mean by that is it is a tiny bit slow, so it's not immediate looking at the activity in the brain the millisecond that it happens. The second way to investigate the brain is an EEG, so electroencephalograph, which measures general electrical activity across the brain. So it records brainwave pattern, apologies for the typo, from neurons. It's often used as a diagnostic tool to diagnose disorders such as epilepsy, but it measures general levels of electrical activity across the brain. So that is showing function of the brain, but it does not show structure. So an EEG shows function, but not structure. Remember, an fMRI will show you function and structure. In the PowerPoint, if you click on the pictures on these slides, it will link you to a video of an example of all of these types of scanning. EEGs are invaluable in diagnosis. They have very high temporal resolutions. They're very quick. However, information is generalized and you cannot pinpoint exact activity. And also, as we said, it doesn't show structure. The third way to investigate the brain is an ERP, or an event-related potential. That is a specific pattern of electrical activity in the brain in response to a specific stimuli. So an EEG is a general pattern of electrical activity. An ERP is a specific pattern of electrical activity in response to a specific stimuli. So different cognitive processes, looking at a ladder, for example, will produce a different ERP than sitting down on a chair. ERPs are more specific than EEGs. They have excellent temporal resolution, and there's lots of research on them. However, they're difficult to measure, and there's some lack of standardization in methodology. So in an ideal world, an ERP is better than an EEG, but realistically, an EEG is used much more than an ERP. And again, this is just showing function, not structure. So fMRI is structure and function. EEG and ERP show function. The fourth way to investigate the brain is not a scanning technique, it's a post-mortem. This is where someone's brain is analysed after their death. If you are not squeamish, there is a link to someone performing a post-mortem on a brain, so if you want to see how it's done and how kind of a post-mortem works. You can take a brain and compare it to what we call a neurotypical or a normal brain to see differences in brain structure. Now, postmortems only show structure. They do not show function because the brain is no longer working. So no function, but it does show structure. Postmortems are used to improve our medical knowledge. They help to generate hypotheses for further studies. However, it's hard to establish causation, and you've got an issue of ethical issues in terms of consent before death. If you want a bit of synoptic links to memory and cognitive psychology, HM donated his brain after he died. There is footage on YouTube of HM's brain post-mortem, and also HM's brain slicing, where they sliced his brain up so they could study it microscopically, in case you are interested in that. This is a summary of the 4 methods and the strengths and weaknesses of each. Make sure you know at least one strength and one weakness of all 4 methods of investigation. And again, research methods comes up everywhere. And here's HM with some questions. Some short answer exam questions. And the answers. Another short answer question. It's a fairly common question. This is an essay question. Just to bear in mind, when you get essay questions, be clear as to what the question is asking you for. That's just a reminder of some of the command words that are used in essay questions. If you're struggling with evaluation, remember, link it to your issues and debates, but you can think about kind of these acronyms. It's something from Tutor2U. And remember to elaborate on your evaluation. This is something that students forget to do in essays on investigating the brain. So again, this is from Tutor2U, and it's just to guide us to try to how to elaborate your AO3 points. In an essay, if you're struggling with how to start a sentence, here are some pointers. And if you're struggling with words within a sentence, so to create flow, here are some examples of some connectives you can use. That would be kind of the content of that exam answer. You would not have to write about all of it to get the 16 marks. If you were picking 2 to write about in a 16-mark question, I would pick fMRI and something else. So compare fMRI maybe with EEG, or compare it with postmortems. Remember, an fMRI is the only one that shows structure and function, so it's the best one to use if you're just picking one. The electrical ones only show function, and the postmortem only shows structure.